Welcome to our third user session today, expediting your efforts with saved queries, where we will learn to use, create, and modify saved queries. What is a saved query? That's a good question. A saved query is a saved search criteria that's designed to produce desired results that users can call upon at a click of a mouse instead of writing from scratch. Saved queries are usually complex and may include Boolean, proximity, metadata fields, range, and wildcards. They're not going to be your single word search because you can just type that just as easily. Novice users can execute highly complex search analysis without the need to know or understand the search syntax and the rules of running the search. So they can produce results just by running a saved query. Let's have a look. So how do you execute a saved query? There are two places where you can call upon the saved queries. One is right under the search area. You can click Saved Query, where it's neatly organized in categories, and each category may have one or more saved queries. Another method is to use the assistant, the AI assistant, where here, if you start a new topic, you can click on Saved Queries, and then you can select a topic, and then after you select a topic, it will let you select the actual query you want. So those are the two ways you can execute a saved query. And now we will talk about the difference between a static saved query and a dynamic saved query. A static saved query requires no input from the user. For example, if I went to Acme Corp and looked for SQL code usage, that is a static query. There was nothing instructed from the user to input to assist the search, and it just plugged it in to the search box. Clicking the search will now produce every single command for SQL commands in the entire system. And here we have it. So the novice user who doesn't know how to operate SmartTS yet and doesn't know much about SQL can produce an analysis of all the locations in the entire corporation where we're using SQL commands. That's what's nice about the saved queries. And here's just an example. All the select, insert, delete statements. A dynamic query requires input from the user before moving on. Let's have a look at what a dynamic query looks like. I'm going to go to mainframe, and I'm going to go to the legacy value to field. It's basically we're looking for where are we moving a value to specific fields. Now you see that the user is prompted. We need both values. We need what are we moving. So we're moving a Y or an N or a Z or S or G. And then what field or part of field name. So I can just type here, let's say, tax or code. And I'm done. I'm inserting. And you can see that the query, the saved query, took what I entered and put it in the correct places within the saved query. Running this saved query will produce very accurate results and find me all the business logic in the company that we are moving certain values to specific fields, and that can be very critical in, for example, finding where we're moving a wrong value to a field in the database. And here it is. This is a very smart saved query because simply by adding a little bit of lines before and after, you're basically producing a very detailed business logic report to in the entire company of where you're actually moving values to specific fields. So this report is a very useful report. So we saw the difference between a static saved query and a dynamic saved query. So how do you create a saved query? For example, let's assume we did a search. I'm just going to go and do a search here that was already done in my history. And this was a very smart search. It actually located where we have fields in both the working storage and the procedure. So when you see a search that you like, that you think can be made to a saved query, you simply click this Save button here. It puts the query in the box here. You can see it right there. And we're going to give this a name. So what this query is doing, it's locating fields in both working and procedure. So it's going to be locate fields in both working and procedure. I'm going to put it in a category either mainframe, or I can add my own category. I can add a category called Summit Samples. Visible to all means that anyone using SmartTS will be able to view and execute this query. If I want this query to always run with the filter, meaning the data types that were pre-selected, I can make it happen right here. I can say use existing filter. And these are filters that I currently have in my system. So I can, for example, say in my COBOL. So I know that when anybody runs this query, it will use a filter called my COBOL, which is going to include all the COBOL data types. Now, what this saved query does is it's looking for a field called install amount in both the working and the procedure. If we want to make this dynamic and we want to let the user decide what field he's looking for in working and procedure, then we insert a parameter. Please enter field or part of field. And instead of having the install amount, I'm going to go in here, delete this install amount, because I want it to be dynamic, and insert this parameter. But because I have this parameter twice, I don't want to have a user to type in the same field twice. I can simply copy this parameter and put the same parameter in again. And SmartTS will ask the user for it once, and he'll populate both. And we save it. So now, anyone in the company that goes to saved query, goes to the mainframe source, field using procedure, will click. They can enter tax amount, insert, and it builds the query, the correct query for them, and now we can find it. But now this one will work for any field. So what did we find here? We found all the places where tax amount is defined in working as well as used in procedure. You see, this is the definitions working, and these are all the procedure. So that was a very easy way to create a saved query by looking or using an existing query. Another way is to go to the history and look at all the searches of everybody in the company. And I may locate a very interesting search in that area. And any one of those searches I can take and make into a saved query. So for example, let me have a look here. Here is a search that is looking for specific commands, arithmetic commands, related to specific fields. Let's run that, see what we get, the results. And we have the commands of add or subtract to fields with text or code. So that can also be made into a saved query. Again, we just save it, give it a name, a description, and here, instead of subtract or add, right, we can say, please enter, what commands. Instead of the text and code, we'll say, please enter field or part of field. We'll give this a name. Find commands related to fields. Category, we can create our own category if we want, call it Summit. Make it visible to all. We can decide that there will be no search filter, meaning the user, it will use whatever the user has in searching on right now. And search type, you can specify if you want to have Boolean, complexity, we want a Boolean search, and save this. And now we added another saved query. Let's check it out. Saved queries. We added a new category called Summit. There it is. Find commands related to fields. Enter what commands we want. Compute and rounded with fields related to tax or amount. And again, without knowing the hows, we get the results we want, all the places where we have compute rounded with amount. Usually when I generate a saved query, I like to give an example of what I'm expecting. So I don't know if I have it here, but you see here's an example of enter primary number of range, and I say example 100 or a range 10 tilde tilde is a range 10 to 500. So I help the users by giving them an example of what kind of information I'm looking for. So that's just good practice. To edit a saved query, you can go to Saved Queries, click on the Edit icon, and here you can change the parameters, if there are parameters, or you can change the filters, the description, and so forth. So it's very easy to edit a saved query. Let's execute a saved query from the AI assistant. Again, you can either click on saved queries or type here, start to type, and it automatically brings you the saved queries. Click enter. I can either type a number here for, let's say, Costco, 6 for Costco, or I can click on the 6 here, Costco. This one has dynamic search for receipts. Let's click and see what it does. So it wants to collect information to construct my query. Enter the from amount. From amount value is, let's say, $250. Enter. What is the to amount value? So the receipt can be between 250 and, let's say, 600. You know, Costco always ends up being more than you expect. And then what kind of items? So you see I have an example of lamb or prime. Let's just say we're looking for where we buy lamb chops. Those who have been at Incom for actual admin training know that we, in fact, buy a lot of lamb chops there. Now we can limit the search to specific data types, languages, environments. So I can choose a specific language, I can choose a specific environment, or I can choose any. And now the search is going to be done automatically, and the results will be displayed. And here are the results. So here we have a receipt. This is the textual information that came from the receipt. And if you click on the actual PDF link, you can see the receipt was in fact between 250 and 500 and did contain lamb chops right there. And I always say SmartES is a great tool, but it's not limited to code. Anything the human eye can see can be supported. So it can be used in many other departments in your company. You can build safe queries that combine keywords, fields, wildcards. For example, if we did a search of data name contains, let's say, all the systems that are beginning with TT for timetable, and we also want my criteria, so and any criteria. So we can take this search and make it dynamic. I'm not even going to run it. I'm going to take it. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go to Saved Queries. I'm going to go to our Summit, and I'm going to add a saved query. It's another way of adding it directly into the system. So here's the criteria I just typed in there. It's got a mixture of the data name, which is a field, a wildcard, and whatever criteria we want. So here I'm going to say limit search to a subsystem. The Summit is fine. That's where I want it. Visible to all, yes. It'll create the existing filter or currently selected filter. And now, instead of the TT, I'm going to insert, please enter a subsystem initials. Example, TT for timetable, or holding assets, HA. And then, for any criteria, we'll say, please enter your search. And save. So what's going to happen now? Now we have a new saved query in the Summit. Limit search to a subsystem. It's going to say, what is a subsystem? Well, it's timetable. What are you looking for? We're looking for compute, or subtract. So this can be a complex search in here as well. And once you insert it, of course, you can keep adding to the search. But now we've built a search that anyone can run and limit it to a subsystem. And let's run it. Let's see what we get here. All the computes and all the subtracts. So what have we learned? We've learned that to execute saved queries, you can execute them from the tab in the search box or from running the saved query AI assistant. You can add queries by going directly to a category and clicking the Add button, or whenever you run a search and you get the results, there's a Add Saved Query button you can click on. It then takes you with the current query. We also learned that if you have multiple parameters that are the same value, you only have to insert it once, and you can use that parameter multiple times, and it will automatically fill in all the multiple places. Currently, these saved queries come pre-populated with some very interesting queries for your teams. For example, in the mainframe, we have a lot of queries we've already designed. We have text patterns allowing you to locate email addresses, IP addresses, social security numbers. So feel free to explore all the different queries there. Add your own. We also learned that it's possible to go to the history, look at all the used searches, find an interesting search, and either copy that search and take it and just add it manually, or you can execute that search, and once executed, click on the saved query. So this was a quick how to use and how to create and how to modify saved queries, and hope this helps. And we're going to open the session for questions.